My name is Nora Vance, and I am 29 years old. 3 months ago, I was happily planning my dream wedding, completely unaware that my fiancé Liam was secretly sleeping with Sarah, my absolute best friend since college. They were the two people I trusted most in the world, and they were destroying my life right behind my back. Fast forward to today. Today was supposed to be my wedding day. Instead, my phone has been ringing nonstop since 6 o'clock in the morning. It was Sarah. She left me 17 desperate voicemails, sobbing uncontrollably, begging for my forgiveness. She told me that Liam had just abandoned her, emptying her bank accounts and leaving her with nothing but a mountain of hidden debt. She begged me to help her, crying that she finally understood what a monster he truly was. I listened to her desperate voicemails, and I just smiled. She had no idea that her sudden financial ruin and the complete disappearance of Liam were not accidents. They were the carefully calculated results of a trap I had set in motion the very moment I discovered their affair. They wanted to build a new life on top of my broken heart, so I decided to show them what a real collapse looks like. Before I tell you exactly how I orchestrated their downfall, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you are listening from. Now let me take you back 3 months to the rainy Tuesday evening when my perfect illusion shattered and I walked into apartment 412. Liam had told me he was working late at the law firm. Sarah told me she had a terrible stomach bug and was sleeping. I was home alone, happily organizing our wedding seating chart. Around 9 o'clock at night, I drove to the local store to buy printer ink. On my way back, I took a shortcut downtown and passed the building where Sarah lived. My breath suddenly caught in my throat. Parked right outside the main lobby was a sleek black sedan with a custom silver rim. It was the exact car belonging to the man who was supposedly buried in legal paperwork across the city. I pulled my car over, walked into the building, and took the elevator up to the fourth floor. The carpeted hallway was completely silent. I walked slowly until I stood in front of her door. I raised my hand to knock, praying to God for a logical explanation. But before my knuckles even touched the wood, I heard a soft, intimate laugh coming from inside. It was undeniably Sarah. And then a low, familiar, masculine voice replied, the same voice that promised to love me forever. I stood frozen outside apartment 412. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribs that I thought it might break through my chest. I reached into my purse with shaking hands and pulled out the emergency spare key Sarah had given me 2 years ago. She had told me to keep it in case she ever locked herself out. She never expected me to use it on a Tuesday night. I slid the key into the lock and turned it as slowly as humanly possible. The deadbolt clicked open with a faint metallic sound. I pushed the heavy wooden door open just enough to slip inside. The apartment was dimly lit by a few candles burning on the kitchen counter. Scattered across the living room floor was a trail of discarded clothing. I recognized the expensive silk blouse belonging to Sarah. Right next to it was the custom-tailored suit jacket belonging to Liam. It was the exact same jacket I had picked up from the dry cleaners for him just yesterday. I walked silently down the short hallway toward the master bedroom. The door was wide open. I did not need to step inside. From the shadows of the hallway, I could see everything perfectly reflected in the large vanity mirror facing the bed. There they were, the man I was supposed to marry in 90 days and the woman who was supposed to stand beside me at the altar. They were tangled in the expensive linen sheets I had bought Sarah for her birthday. Liam was kissing her neck, whispering those exact same sweet promises he had rehearsed on me for 4 years. In that terrifying moment, something inside me completely snapped. A normal person would have screamed. A normal person would have thrown open the door, cried, and demanded an explanation. But I did not shed a single tear. The searing pain in my chest instantly froze into a block of solid absolute ice. I slowly reached into my pocket and pulled out my smartphone. I turned the flash off and silenced the camera shutter. Standing perfectly still in the dark hallway, I recorded exactly 2 minutes of high-definition video. I wanted proof, I wanted leverage, and most importantly, I wanted a constant reminder of why I could never show them mercy. When I had the footage saved to a secure cloud drive, I turned around and walked out exactly the same way I came in. I locked the front door, walked down the hall, and took the elevator back to the ground floor. By the time I sat back inside my car, my hands had stopped shaking. The naive girl who was happily planning a wedding just an hour ago was dead. The woman sitting in the driver's seat was someone entirely different. I drove back to the apartment I shared with Liam. I walked into the living room and saw the wedding seating chart still spread across the floor. I picked up the beautifully printed place cards with the names of Liam and Sarah written on them. I did not rip them up. Instead, I carefully placed them back in their exact positions. If they wanted to play games in the dark, I was going to let them, but I would be the one controlling the board. I was not going to cancel the wedding immediately. I was going to use those next 90 days to systematically dismantle every single aspect of their lives, and I was going to do it right to their smiling faces. The next morning, the sun rose over the city exactly like it did every other day. I woke up at 6 o'clock, walked into the kitchen, and started making coffee. 10 minutes later, Liam walked through the front door. His hair was slightly messy and his silk tie was loosened. He looked exhausted, but it was not the exhaustion of a man who had spent the entire night reviewing complicated legal documents. It was the physical fatigue of a man who had spent the night in the bed of my best friend. I poured him a cup of hot coffee and handed it to him. He kissed my forehead, wrapped his arms around my waist, and sighed heavily. He told me the deposition preparation took all night, and he was incredibly sorry he had to leave me alone. I looked up into his beautiful brown eyes, the same eyes I used to trust more than anything in the entire world. I reached out, adjusted his collar, and told him I understood completely. I told him how proud I was of his hard work and dedication. He smiled, kissed my cheek again, and went down the hall to take a shower. It was terrifying how easy it was to lie to him. I realized that if he could do it so flawlessly, I could do it infinitely better. An hour after Liam left for his law firm, my cell phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. The caller ID displayed the name of my maid of honor. I took a deep breath, cleared my throat to ensure my voice sounded perfectly normal, and answered the call. Sarah sounded bright and cheerful. She told me her terrible stomach bug had miraculously cleared up overnight. She asked how my evening was and complained about how much she missed hanging out with me. Listening to her sweet, bubbly voice, a wave of pure physical nausea washed over my body. I pictured her laughing in the dark hallway of her apartment just 12 hours ago. But I forced a warm, convincing laugh. I told her I was so glad she was feeling better because we had my final wedding dress fitting scheduled for the upcoming weekend. She squealed with excitement and promised she would not miss it for the world. When I ended the call, the silence in my apartment felt heavy and suffocating. The first phase of my plan was gathering intelligence. I knew Liam was a highly successful corporate lawyer, but I also knew he was incredibly arrogant. Arrogant men always make critical mistakes because they genuinely believe they are too smart to ever get caught. I walked into the spare bedroom that Liam used as his home office. He kept his important client files locked in a heavy metal filing cabinet, but I was not interested in his clients. I was interested in his personal finances. Liam always insisted on managing our joint bank accounts, claiming his financial background made him better suited for the task. I had trusted him blindly. That blind trust ended the moment I walked into that room. I sat down at his sleek mahogany desk and opened his personal laptop. It was protected by a security password. I tried his birth date, our anniversary, and his college graduation year. None of them worked. I sat back and thought about the absolute audacity of the man. A sick, intuitive thought crossed my mind. I typed in the month and day of the birthday belonging to Sarah. The screen immediately unlocked. A cold chill ran down my spine. The disrespect was so profound it almost took my breath away. But I did not have time to be angry. I opened his private document folders and began my systematic search. What I found over the next 4 hours was far worse than a simple physical affair. Liam was not just cheating on me. He was running a massive, complex financial scheme, and he was using the two women in his life as disposable collateral. I discovered a hidden folder containing bank statements from offshore accounts. Liam was heavily in debt. He owed hundreds of thousands of dollars to private investors and shady creditors. He had been secretly siphoning money from our joint wedding fund to cover the minimum interest payments on his hidden loans. But the most devastating discovery was a folder labeled with the name of my best friend. I opened the digital files and felt my stomach drop completely. Liam had drafted a series of fraudulent loan applications and property deeds. He was planning to purchase a massive commercial real estate property. But because his own credit was ruined by his hidden debts, he needed a pristine financial guarantor. He was systematically manipulating Sarah. He had convinced her to sign preliminary documents promising her that they were going to build a wealthy empire together once he found a way to cancel his wedding with me. He was using her excellent credit score and her inherited family trust fund to secure a massive fraudulent mortgage. Sarah actually believed he was going to leave me and marry her. She thought she was securing her glamorous future with a wealthy, successful lawyer. She had no idea she was signing her own financial death warrant. She was blindly walking into a trap that would leave her bankrupt and legally responsible for his massive criminal debts. I sat in the quiet office, staring at the glowing computer screen. The pieces of the puzzle perfectly aligned. Liam was planning to drain my savings for the wedding use Sarah to secure his fraudulent real estate deal, and then likely abandon both of us when the federal investigators or the debt collectors came knocking. He was a ruthless predator hiding behind a charming smile and an expensive custom suit. I did not delete a single file. I did not alter any of the documents. Instead, I carefully connected a secure external hard drive and copied every single piece of financial evidence, every email, and every drafted contract. I was building a digital guillotine, and Liam had willingly handed me the ropes. My next step was protecting my own survival. I spent the rest of the afternoon quietly opening a new secure bank account under a different financial institution. I slowly began the process of transferring my personal assets out of our joint accounts in small, untraceable increments. I changed my direct deposits and locked my credit profile so he could not open any new credit cards in my name. I was building an invisible fortress around myself while they were busy building a house of cards. By the time Liam came home for dinner that evening, I was sitting on the living room couch, sipping a glass of red wine and watching a romantic comedy on the television. I had cooked his favorite meal. When he took off his jacket and asked me how my day was, I smiled and told him it was wonderfully boring. I asked him if he was excited about our upcoming wedding. He held my hand, looked deeply into my eyes, and promised me it would be the absolute best day of our lives. I squeezed his hand back and agreed with him completely, because I knew that when the time finally came, the destruction of his entire existence would truly be a masterpiece. The weekend finally arrived. It was time for my final wedding dress fitting at an exclusive bridal boutique downtown. Sarah met me at the entrance of the store. She hugged me so tightly and handed me a cup of expensive iced coffee. She looked at me with those wide, innocent eyes and told me how incredibly excited she was for my big day. I hugged her back and thanked her for being the best maid of honor in the world. Inside the boutique, I stepped onto the circular pedestal in front of the massive mirrors. The seamstress carefully zipped up my custom white silk gown. It was breathtaking. The heavy silk train pooled around me like spilled milk on the polished wooden floor. Sarah sat on the pink velvet sofa behind me, wiping a fake tear from her cheek. She told me I looked like an absolute angel. She said Liam was going to cry the moment he saw me walking down the aisle. I looked at her reflection in the large mirror. I wondered how she could sit there wearing a designer dress bought with her family trust fund while secretly sleeping with a man who was actively stealing every single penny she owned. I turned around and smiled sweetly at her. I told her I was so lucky to have her in my life. I casually mentioned that Liam and I were talking about buying a new luxury house after the honeymoon. I looked directly into her eyes and asked her if she had ever thought about investing her trust fund into commercial real estate. I wanted to see exactly how well she could lie under pressure. Sarah stiffened slightly. Her shoulders grew tense. She quickly took a sip of her coffee and forced a bright, enthusiastic smile. She told me she actually just met a brilliant financial advisor who was helping her diversify her massive portfolio. She said she was about to sign some major investment documents that would secure her financial future forever. I nodded slowly, praising her for being so incredibly smart and independent. She had no idea her brilliant financial advisor was currently sleeping with both of us and planning to leave her completely bankrupt. I did not try to warn her. I did not feel a single drop of pity. She had made her choice the moment she opened her bedroom door for my fiancé. Over the next 8 weeks, my life became a masterclass in deception. While Liam and Sarah continued their secret affair behind closed doors, I systematically dismantled the entire foundation of our upcoming wedding. I was not going to stand at an altar and be humiliated in front of 200 guests. But I was also not going to lose my hard-earned money paying for a fake celebration. I took a week off from my corporate marketing job, claiming I needed extra time to finalize the wedding details. Instead, I spent those 5 days quietly canceling every single vendor. I called the botanical garden, the luxury caterer, the florist, and the live jazz band. I told them a devastating family emergency had forced us to call off the celebration permanently. Because I had signed all the contracts under my own name using my personal credit cards, I was able to secure partial refunds for almost everything. I did not send the refunded money back to the joint account I shared with Liam. I routed every single dollar directly into my new secure private bank account. Liam never noticed a thing. He was too busy desperately moving money around to cover his massive hidden debts. He was constantly distracted, constantly checking his phone, and constantly lying to my face about late-night meetings at the law firm. Every evening we would sit across from each other at the dinner table. He would ask me how the wedding planning was going, and I would smile and tell him everything was absolutely perfect. With exactly 4 weeks left until the fake wedding day, I took the final and most devastating step of my plan. I compiled all the financial evidence I had stolen from his computer into a massive encrypted digital file. It contained the fraudulent loan applications, the forged signatures, the offshore bank transfers, and the explicit proof that he was using his wealthy clients' funds to cover his personal investment losses. I did not just send this file to the local police station. That would be too quiet and easily swept under the rug. I wanted total, absolute destruction. I mailed physical copies of the evidence anonymously to the senior partners at his prestigious law firm. I sent a copy to the State Bar Association demanding a full ethical investigation and immediate disbarment. And finally, I sent the entire digital dossier to a highly aggressive federal financial crimes task force. I set the scheduled delivery date for all the packages to be exactly 3 days before the wedding. I wanted Liam to feel the ultimate high of believing he had successfully pulled off his massive scam right before the floor completely collapsed beneath his feet. With everything perfectly in place, I packed my 2 suitcases. I left them hidden in the trunk of my car. I bought a one-way plane ticket to Seattle. I was fully prepared to disappear into the wind and watch the glorious explosion from a very safe distance. Wednesday morning arrived exactly 3 days before the fake wedding. I woke up early and made breakfast for Liam one last time. He sat at the kitchen table drinking his coffee and typing rapidly on his phone. He looked stressed, but he forced a bright smile when I kissed his cheek. He told me he had a massive meeting with the senior partners at his law firm that morning to finalize a huge corporate merger. I smiled back and told him to knock them dead. He grabbed his expensive leather briefcase and walked out the door. He had absolutely no idea that the meeting he was walking into was actually his own professional execution. The moment I heard his car pull out of the driveway, I grabbed my purse and walked out of the apartment. I did not leave a dramatic note. I did not smash any plates. I simply locked the door behind me, got into my car, and drove straight to the international airport. By 9 o'clock in the morning, I was sitting in the first-class lounge waiting for my flight to Seattle. At that exact same moment, a courier delivered a heavy sealed box to the senior managing partner at Liam's law firm. I sat in the comfortable leather chair, sipping orange juice and checking my watch. I could perfectly picture the scene unfolding miles away. The senior partner opening the box, the shock on his face as he read the undeniable proof of embezzlement and fraud, the immediate phone call to the building security to lock down the elevators. But Liam was a survivor, and survivors are like cornered animals. He must have realized something was wrong the moment the partners called him into the glass conference room. Before the federal agents could even arrive to freeze his physical assets, he executed his final, desperate backup plan. Because I had secretly locked down all of my own finances weeks ago, Liam had no access to my money. So he turned to his ultimate victim. He used the fraudulent power of attorney documents Sarah had blindly signed for their fake real estate deal. In a matter of minutes, he electronically drained every single penny from her trust fund. He maxed out the massive lines of credit he had opened in her name and transferred all the cash into untraceable offshore accounts. Then he simply vanished. He walked out the back door of his prestigious law firm, left his expensive custom car in the parking garage, and completely disappeared into the wind before the federal authorities could put handcuffs on his wrists. I boarded my flight to Seattle at noon. I turned my phone on airplane mode, leaned my head against the window, and fell into the deepest, most peaceful sleep I had experienced in 4 years. When I woke up, I was in a completely new city, a cold, beautiful city where nobody knew my name and nobody knew my past. I spent the next 2 days unpacking my bags in a beautiful high-rise apartment I had rented weeks in advance. I bought fresh flowers for my kitchen counter. I watched the rain fall over the ocean. I felt entirely, completely free. Then Saturday morning arrived, the day I was supposed to wear a white dress and walk down the aisle. At exactly 6 o'clock in the morning, my cell phone resting on the bedside table began to ring. It vibrated violently against the wood. I rolled over and looked at the glowing screen. The caller ID displayed the name of my former maid of honor. It was Sarah. I let it ring until it went to voicemail. Then it rang again, and again, and again. I sat up in my comfortable new bed, poured myself a glass of water, and finally pressed play on the 17 desperate voicemails she had left me. Her voice was completely unrecognizable. She was sobbing so violently she could barely breathe. "Nora, please," she cried into the phone. "Please pick up. I know today is supposed to be the wedding, but something terrible has happened. Liam is gone. He took everything. My accounts are completely empty. The bank just called me and said I owe $3 million for a commercial property I do not even own. I do not know what to do. He lied to me, Nora. He lied to both of us. Please call me back. I have nobody else." I listened to her crying echoing through my quiet, beautiful bedroom. She genuinely believed we were two innocent victims of the same terrible man. She thought we could bond over our shared trauma. I deleted the voicemails. I blocked her number. I set my phone down and walked into my new living room to watch the sunrise. The trap had closed perfectly. The architect of the fraud was a fugitive, and the best friend who betrayed me was left holding the ashes of his empire. For 2 entire years, I lived a life of absolute tranquility in Seattle. I was promoted to the director of marketing at a major technology firm. I bought a beautiful modern house overlooking the dark waters of the Puget Sound. I drank my morning coffee watching the ferry boats cross the bay. The names Liam and Sarah completely disappeared from my vocabulary. I did not check their social media accounts. I did not ask mutual friends about their misery. To me, they were entirely dead. I had successfully rebuilt my life from the ashes. But the past has a very funny way of resurrecting itself when you least expect it. It was a cold Tuesday afternoon in November. I was sitting in my glass corner office reviewing a new advertising campaign. My desk phone rang. It was an external corporate call bypassing the strict block I had placed on my personal cell phone. I answered with my standard professional greeting. There was a heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear someone breathing unsteadily. Then a shaky, broken voice finally spoke. "Hello, Nora. Please do not hang up." It was Sarah. 2 years had passed, but I recognized her voice instantly. It sounded hollow and completely exhausted. The bright, bubbly tone she used to use to manipulate people was entirely gone. "How did you get this number, Sarah?" I asked, my voice perfectly calm and icy. "I paid a private investigator to find your office," she replied, her voice trembling. "I know you blocked me on everything. I know you absolutely hate me. But I had to find you because I finally know the truth, Nora. I know you did not just run away from the wedding. I know you were the one who sent the financial files to the federal agents. I know you set the trap that destroyed me, that—" I leaned back in my expensive leather chair. I did not deny it. I did not feel a single ounce of guilt. "Congratulations on figuring it out 2 years too late," I said smoothly. "I hope the $3 million debt is keeping you warm at night. Now, if you will excuse me, I have a business to run." "Wait!" Sarah practically screamed into the phone. "Please, Nora. I am not calling to yell at you. I am not calling to fight. I am calling because they found him. The federal marshals finally caught Liam. I paused. My hand tightened slightly around the phone receiver. The charismatic architect of the fraud had finally run out of places to hide. They found him hiding under a fake name in Costa Rica. Sarah continued, her words rushing out in a desperate panic. They are flying him back to the city tonight to face massive federal charges. That sounds like wonderful news for the justice system, I replied casually. But it has absolutely nothing to do with me. I have moved on. Yes, it does, Sarah cried. It has everything to do with you, Nora. Because his defense lawyers are building a case to pin the entire fraud operation on me. He is telling the federal prosecutors that I was the criminal mastermind. He is claiming I used my wealthy family trust fund to orchestrate the illegal real estate investments, and that he was just my innocent legal advisor who got manipulated. I sat quietly listening to the absolute panic in her voice. Liam was doing exactly what Liam always did. He was throwing the closest woman under the bus to save his own skin. Nora, they are going to send me to federal prison for 20 years, Sarah sobbed. The prosecutors believe him because my signature is on all the fraudulent banking documents. You are the only person in the world who has the original, unedited digital files. You are the only one who can prove he drafted the fake documents on his private computer before I ever signed them. Please, Nora, you already destroyed my finances. Do not let him take my physical freedom too. I sat in my beautiful office looking out at the gorgeous Seattle skyline. My former best friend, the woman who smiled to my face while she slept in my bed, was now begging me to save her from a federal prison sentence. I will think about it, I said quietly, and then I hung up the phone. For 10 minutes, I sat in my quiet office staring at the phone. My initial instinct was to do absolutely nothing. Sarah had willingly climbed into a bed built on lies. Letting her sleep in a cold federal prison cell felt like the ultimate poetic justice. But then I thought about Liam, the charismatic sociopath who thought he could outsmart everyone. If the prosecutors believed his lies, he might secure a plea deal. He might serve a few short years in a minimum security facility and walk out ready to destroy another woman. I could not let that happen. Liam needed to be locked in a concrete box for the rest of his natural life. I did not call Sarah back. Instead, I picked up my phone and called the division of the federal prosecutor handling the financial crimes case. I identified myself and told them I had the original metadata and the encrypted files proving the architect of the fraud was Liam. The lead prosecutor requested my immediate presence. I told my assistant I was taking a few days of personal leave. I packed a small overnight bag and boarded a late flight back to the city I had abandoned 2 years ago. When I walked into the massive glass and steel federal building the next morning, the air felt heavy and sterile. 2 armed security guards escorted me to a highly secured conference room on the 15th floor. Waiting inside were 3 federal agents, a senior prosecutor, and a very exhausted-looking defense attorney, but they were not alone. Sitting at the far end of the long mahogany table wearing a cheap gray suit and heavy steel handcuffs was Liam. He looked terrible. The glowing tan from his days hiding in Costa Rica could not hide the dark, hollow circles under his eyes. He had lost weight. He looked small, desperate, and completely stripped of his arrogant power. Sitting on the opposite side of the room, separated by 2 federal marshals, was Sarah. She was wearing a plain black dress, and her face was pale and stained with tears. She looked like a ghost of the glamorous woman who used to be my best friend. When I walked through the heavy wooden doors, the entire room went completely silent. Liam looked up. His eyes widened in absolute shock. He had no idea I was the one who orchestrated his downfall. He thought I was just the naive, heartbroken fiancé who ran away from a canceled wedding. Sarah let out a quiet, desperate sob when she saw me. She thought I was there to save her. She did not realize I was there to execute them both on my own terms. "Please take a seat, Nora," the senior prosecutor said, pointing to the empty chair at the head of the table. "We understand you have original digital evidence regarding the fraudulent property investments." I sat down, placed my expensive leather bag on the table, and slowly unzipped it. I pulled out the heavy silver external hard drive, the exact same drive I had used in the dark office belonging to Liam 2 years ago. "I have everything I said," my voice echoing loudly in the quiet room. "I have the initial drafts of the forged deeds, the timestamps of the offshore transfers, and the recorded keystrokes proving exactly who authored the criminal documents." The defense attorney representing Liam leaned forward looking nervous. He asked me how exactly I obtained these highly confidential files. I looked directly into the terrified brown eyes of Liam and smiled a cold, completely merciless smile. I looked directly at the defense attorney and answered his question with absolute clarity. "I obtained these files from the personal laptop belonging to Liam exactly 2 months before my scheduled wedding." Liam shifted violently in his chair. The heavy steel handcuffs rattled loudly against the mahogany table. "That is a lie," he shouted, his face turning pale. "My computer was highly encrypted. Nobody knew my security passcodes." I slowly turned my gaze back to him. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. My calm tone cut through the sterile room like a razor blade. "You are right," I said smoothly. "Your passcodes were very difficult to guess. It took me a few tries. I tried your birth date. I tried our anniversary. I even tried the date you graduated from law school. None of them worked. But then I had a terrible intuitive thought." I paused, letting the heavy silence fill the room. I looked at Sarah, who was staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. "I typed in the exact month and day of the birthday belonging to Sarah," I continued, "and the computer unlocked immediately." The color drained completely from the face of my former best friend. She looked physically sick. The federal agents in the room exchanged quiet, professional glances. Liam dropped his head, staring down at his handcuffed wrists. The arrogant illusion he had built around his own intelligence was completely shattered. He finally realized that his own disgusting betrayal was the exact key I used to destroy his empire. "You knew," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking into a quiet sob. "You knew about the affair the entire time. You sat with me at the bridal boutique. You smiled at me while we planned the seating chart. You knew, and you did absolutely nothing." "I did not do nothing," I replied, looking at her with cold, empty eyes. "I did exactly what you two did. I smiled to your faces while I planned your destruction behind your backs. You wanted to build a wealthy future on top of my broken heart. I just made sure the foundation was rigged with explosives." I pushed the silver hard drive across the smooth wooden table toward the senior prosecutor. "This drive contains the original metadata, proving that Liam authored every single fraudulent document on his private computer. It proves he manipulated the legal signatures to secure the offshore loans. It proves he is the architect of the entire criminal enterprise." Sarah let out a massive sigh of relief. She buried her face in her hands, crying tears of absolute gratitude. She thought she was finally safe. She thought I had come to rescue her. But the prosecutor did not smile. He placed his hand over the silver drive and looked seriously at Sarah. "Miss Vance," the prosecutor said, addressing me carefully, "we appreciate this critical evidence against the primary suspect. But we must be clear. This evidence proves that Liam authored the documents. However, it does not erase the fact that Sarah willingly signed the final financial transfers. Ignorance of the law is not a legal defense. She is still an accomplice to massive wire fraud. Sarah froze. She slowly lifted her face from her hands, looking at the prosecutor in absolute horror. She turned to me, her eyes begging for a lifeline. "Nora," she cried out, "please, tell them I did not know. Tell them I was just a victim." I stood up from my chair and picked up my expensive leather bag. I looked down at the two people who used to be my entire world. They were both wearing the exact same expression of helpless terror. "I am not a judge," I said quietly. "And I am certainly not your savior. I just provided the truth. What the justice system does with the two of you is entirely out of my hands." I turned my back on the conference table and walked toward the heavy wooden doors. Sarah screamed my name. She begged me to come back. She cried that we used to be sisters. I did not turn around. I did not pause my steps. I simply pushed the doors open and walked out into the sterile, bright hallway of the federal building. The echo of her sobbing faded as the elevator doors closed in front of me. I walked out of the building and stepped into the cool city air. I hailed a taxi and rode straight to the airport. I did not look out the window at the city I used to love. I did not feel a single drop of sadness. The heavy toxic weight I had carried for 2 years completely evaporated. I boarded my flight back to Seattle. I ordered a glass of expensive champagne and watched the clouds roll beneath the wings of the airplane. 6 months later, the federal trial officially concluded. It was a massive media spectacle. Liam tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the evidence I provided was far too devastating. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in a maximum security federal prison for wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. He lost his prestigious law license, his reputation, and the best years of his life. Sarah tried to play the innocent victim until the very end, but her signature was on millions of dollars worth of stolen funds. The jury did not show her any mercy. She was convicted as an active accomplice. She was sentenced to 7 years in a federal facility. Furthermore, the court ordered massive financial restitution. Her family trust fund was completely liquidated to pay back the corporate victims. She went from living in a luxury high-rise apartment to sleeping on a thin mattress in a concrete cell. They had ruined the happiest day of my life, so I made sure to ruin the rest of theirs. Back in Seattle, my life continued to bloom. I was promoted to the vice president of my marketing firm. I spent my weekends hiking the beautiful green mountains and sailing across the deep blue water. I surrounded myself with people who valued honesty and loyalty above everything else. I never received another phone call from Sarah. I never received a letter from Liam. They were completely erased from my reality. Sometimes people ask me if I ever regret how cold and calculating my revenge was. They ask if I ever feel guilty for not warning Sarah before she signed her life away. I always smile and shake my head. I always smile and shake my head. I tell them I do not regret a single thing. When someone willingly hands you a weapon, you do not sit down and ask them why they are holding it. You take it out of their hands and you make sure they can never cut you again. For a long time, I thought I lost my entire world on that rainy Tuesday night. I thought my life was completely over because the perfect illusion I was living in had suddenly shattered. But the absolute truth is that I did not lose anything of value. I lost a liar and I lost a thief. I lost a fake future that was destined to collapse anyway. In return for losing them, I gained my absolute freedom. I gained the ability to trust my own instincts. I built a beautiful empire with my own 2 hands, and I never have to look over my shoulder wondering who is plotting against me in the dark. The expensive custom wedding dress I never wore is probably still sitting in a dusty box in a storage unit somewhere in my old city. But the life I built without it is infinitely more beautiful than any fake fairy tale they could have ever offered me. Sometimes, the absolute best thing a toxic person can do for you is destroy the cage they built around you so you can finally learn how to fly. Thank you so much for listening to my story today. If you loved this tale of ultimate revenge and survival, please take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Have you ever survived a terrible betrayal? Tell me your own story in the comments below. Do not forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss another incredible video. I will see you next time. You next time. You next time. You next time.